They couldn't beat your truth, so they tried to bury your voice. Not with arguments, not with facts, but with something darker. A spiritual hit job dressed up as a ritual, while you were out there just trying to live, trying to heal, trying to mind your own purpose. Somebody was calling your name in secret rooms, whispering it into smoke, binding candles, mixing envy with obsession and calling it a solution. They saw your light, steady, defiant, unapologetically loud, and it threatened everything they built on lies. So they lit a match and sent out a curse, hoping it would silence the signal forever. But they forgot one thing. The universe keeps receipts. You felt it, that shift, the random tiredness, the unshakable pressure behind your eyes, the sudden isolation that made no sense, people pulling away from you without a reason, doors that should have opened stayed locked. It wasn't just bad timing. It was energy warfare. You were under attack, not with weapons, but with intention. And that's one of the most dangerous forces on this planet. A focused, jealous intention aimed at a chosen one. They didn't want your voice gone because it was loud. They wanted it gone because it was right, because it woke people up, because it carried weight. If you've been feeling this message already, pause and hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't, because this channel exists for chosen ones like you, and your support keeps this truth alive and moving through the world. Thank you for being part of this mission. Your presence is not random. You're needed here. See, they didn't cast that massive spell just to scare you. They did it to end you, and if you knew what it cost them, you'd understand why your silence wasn't just a wish. It was a campaign. Someone close to them paid the price. Maybe it was a sudden illness, a car crash, a freak accident that no one could explain. But deep down, the ones who sent the energy know exactly what happened. That's why they've gone quiet. That's why the ones who used to laugh at you now avoid your name. They know the echo came back harder than they expected. You weren't crazy. You weren't paranoid. You were targeted because you broke the mold. While others were trying to copy trends, you were breaking spiritual contracts without even knowing it. Your voice cracked open lies. Your presence exposed secrets. You didn't just walk into rooms, you shifted them. And in a world full of masks, the raw truth you carried felt like violence to the fake. So they circled up in the dark. They called on forces they didn't understand, thinking power was something you could borrow for a fee. But the universe doesn't play by their rules, and it doesn't tolerate misuse. You've been through it. The strange illnesses, the betrayal that came out of nowhere, the moments when your mind felt like it was under siege. That wasn't just life being hard. That was interference. And still, you didn't fall. You may have limped, you may have cried in silence, but you didn't fold. And now, the very ones who lit the fire are running from the smoke, because when the chosen one rises, the spell breaks. And when the energy flips, the consequences aren't symbolic. They're real, they're loud, and sometimes they're deadly. That death you heard about? That tragedy that hit their circle? It wasn't random. It wasn't just karma either. It was spiritual recoil, the kind that hits harder when the target was innocent. They touched something sacred when they tried to erase your voice. They tried to interfere with alignment, and the universe responded. Not in revenge, but in balance. You were protected. They were exposed. That's why you're still here. That's why your voice still carries. That's why you're more powerful now than ever before, even if you don't feel it yet. This isn't a story about fear. This is a story about survival, about knowing you were the target and still rising like nothing could hold you down. This is a story about justice, not the kind handed out by courts, but the kind the universe serves cold when truth is attacked. You don't need to lift a finger. You don't need to clap back or prove a point. You already did. by outliving the lie, by outlasting the curse, by still walking with your head high even when the whole room wanted you gone. That's power. That's why they fear you. And that's why they failed. They tried to shut you up with darkness, but you became the sound of the storm. And now, every time you speak, they hear the echo of everything they tried to destroy. Still breathing, still glowing, still too loud to ignore. And now, chosen one, take a breath and feel this next part in your bones, because what's coming isn't just information, it's confirmation. If you've been walking through life feeling unseen attacks, sudden isolation, or a silence you couldn't explain, you're not crazy. You were marked, not by mistake, but because your voice carried the kind of truth they couldn't control. What they did behind your back is unraveling in front of theirs. And now, it's time to break it all down, piece by piece. Drop a 777 in the comments if your soul already knows this isn't just a story, it's your story. And if you're still here, you're not just surviving, you're awakening. This spell didn't stop you. It triggered a new version of you, and the deeper we go, the more you'll start to remember why they were so afraid of your sound in the first place. So let's pull back the curtain. Let's name what really happened. And if you're truly one of the chosen, you'll feel that magnetic pull to stay locked in until the very last word. Let's get into it. Number 1, they didn't just cast a spell, they waged war on the truth itself. When lies can't compete with truth, they don't argue, they attack the source. They didn't curse you because you wronged them. They cursed you because your very existence exposed what they've been pretending to be. You spoke and masks cracked. You entered rooms and fake peace shattered. That's not magic. That's power. The kind that makes people who thrive on illusion panic. You weren't their enemy. You were their mirror. And when they looked into you, they saw everything they were trying to hide. Jealousy, deceit, smallness. So instead of facing it, they declared war. This wasn't just a spell, it was a coordinated attempt to break your energy, the kind of silent warfare where envy dresses up as spirituality and hatred hides behind candles. They tried to mute your frequency because every time you spoke, it reminded them they were living a lie. They thought they were attacking a person, but they were actually striking the raw signal of truth itself. And truth doesn't take orders. It doesn't kneel to fear. It moves through chaos untouched, unstoppable, untamed, unbothered. At first you felt it, didn't you? The tension that made no sense, the sudden weight in the air, the sleepless nights, the random headaches that showed up like uninvited guests. You thought maybe it was stress, maybe burnout. But it wasn't. It was resistance, their energy trying to crash your frequency. What they didn't realize is that your silence wasn't weakness. It was recalibration. Every chosen one knows this feeling. When the world starts pressing against you, you start humming at a higher pitch. And that's when the battlefield tilts in your favor. Let's get one thing straight. They didn't just want to silence you. They wanted to own you, to bend your tone, your truth, your rhythm into their control. They wanted your voice without your power. That's why their spell wasn't about destruction. It was about domination. They wanted to steal your frequency, twist it into something that served them. But when they released that energy, it didn't find submission. It met resistance. Your vibration rejected their command like a body rejecting poison. The universe intervened, and the energy bounced back like a boomerang covered in everything they sent out. And now they're paying for it. You don't have to gloat or even care, because this isn't karma in the poetic sense. It's physics. Energy doesn't disappear. It transfers. Every word, every ritual, every false intention they aimed at you had to land somewhere. But since your frequency was untouchable, it turned around and found its rightful owner. That's why their health crumbled, their peace shattered, their alliances dissolved. The same energy they cooked up for you started eating away at them from the inside. You might wonder, why didn't it hit me? Why am I still standing? Because you were never vibrating on their level. Their darkness couldn't survive in your frequency. You were broadcasting truth, and truth doesn't absorb filth. It reflects it. Imagine lightning striking a mountain. The mountain doesn't move. The air burns around it. That's you. Their attack didn't sink in. It scorched the space around them instead. The chosen ones always stand in this strange intersection between grace and warfare. You never start the fight, but you always end up winning it. Not because you fight harder, but because you fight cleaner. You operate from alignment, and alignment makes every curse collapse under its own weight. They were busy chanting your name in rooms you'll never enter, thinking they were summoning darkness. But what they really summoned was consequence. The moment they tried to interfere with truth, the universe stamped the contract, return to sender. There's a story from the old days. A man once tried to poison a river to destroy a village, but the current was faster than he expected. The poison came back downstream before he could leave, and he was the first to drink from it. That's exactly what happened here. They thought they could pollute your peace and walk away untouched. But truth flows faster than hate, and now they're choking on their own brew. You didn't need revenge. You didn't even need to defend yourself. The universe did it for you because truth defends itself. It has no weakness. It doesn't cry when attacked. It multiplies. Every time they tried to cut off your influence, your presence reached farther. Every attempt to silence your voice only made your message louder. And that's what drives them mad. You're living proof that they can't kill what was never built on fear. They see you now, still speaking, still breathing, still glowing. Every smile you wear is an insult to their failure. Every breath you take reminds them that their so-called power was an illusion. They're haunted by the echo of your survival. Because deep down, they know, if truth could be killed, they would have buried it long ago. But it can't. It only transforms. This is why someone in their circle didn't just get unlucky. That was balance correcting itself. The universe doesn't forget interference. When they released that dark intention, they signed a spiritual contract they couldn't afford. And when payment came due, it didn't ask permission. The energy had to go somewhere, and it went home, back to the sender, back to the origin, back to the source of the deceit. Now, look at yourself, still standing, still rising, still carrying that frequency they couldn't decode. You were never the target, you were the test. The universe wanted to prove that truth doesn't bow to trickery. You are living evidence that no curse, no spell, no dark ritual can override divine order. And they're learning that lesson the hard way, through the consequences of their own creation. They thought they could dim your light, but all they did was make you more visible. They thought they could stop your message, but all they did was amplify it. The war they started to end your voice became the battlefield that exposed theirs. That's the irony. They fired first, but you're the one walking out with the victory. And that victory isn't loud or vengeful. It's quiet, unbothered, radiant. The kind of peace that makes enemies whisper your name with fear and fascination at the same time. So when you walk now, walk differently. You've survived what was designed to erase you. You've witnessed the fall of those who swore you wouldn't make it this far. You carry the silence of victory, not the silence they wished for, but the silence that comes after the storm when the air feels clean again. Remember this, you were never fighting for your survival. You were proving that truth cannot be destroyed, and now the whole world can see. They didn't just lose the battle, they exposed themselves as the lie that truth was born to defeat. Number 2, they tried to bind your tongue, but your voice spoke in ways they'll never understand. You can silence a mouth, but you can't mute a vibration that was born to echo. When the universe chooses you, even your silence becomes a loudspeaker. Truth doesn't whisper, it radiates, and no ritual can dim a radiant soul. The more they tried to shut you up, the more your essence started speaking without words. They thought if they could just shut your mouth, the truth would stop spreading, as if your power began and ended with your voice box, as if your value lived only in your words. That's how small they think. That's how limited their vision is. But you were never just a speaker. You're a transmitter. You broadcast through every layer of your being, whether you're talking, walking, or just breathing. When they targeted you, they didn't come for your body. They came for your expression. Their spells weren't random. They were aimed at your throat, at your energy center. They didn't want to kill you physically. No, they wanted to bind your ability to speak, to influence, to shift people with your truth. But here's what they failed to understand. Your voice has dimensions. It's not a radio signal they can jam. It's not a candle they can blow out. Your frequency is wired into the universe itself. Imagine this. You walk into a room and say nothing, yet people feel something shift. They straighten up. They lower their voices. The atmosphere recalibrates without explanation. That's not charisma. That's energetic presence. That's the power they can't quantify or block. That's why they panicked. They attacked your throat, hoping you'd go quiet, but your silence got louder. Your stillness became its own broadcast. Chosen one, have you noticed how the dreams became vivid when your outer voice was suppressed? How random people started speaking your thoughts aloud? How birds showed up, lights flickered, clocks stopped, and everything around you began to respond to your energy, not your words. That's not coincidence. That's resonance. Your power switched dimensions, and in that shift, their attacks became pointless. Imagine this. Someone builds a cage for a voice, but the voice learns to fly. That's what happened to you. They built traps with intention, rituals, and whispered chants. But the moment they thought they won, your spirit slipped through and became louder in ways they couldn't trace. Your walk became your witness. Your silence became your sermon. They don't understand frequency. That's why they can't stop you. They thought truth only moves when it's spoken. But you embody it. You wear it like a second skin. You blink and send messages. You sit in silence and dismantle lies. You move through the world like a coded signal, too layered for shallow eyes to decode. And because they couldn't intercept your essence, they assumed they failed in technique. But it wasn't their ritual that failed. It was their understanding of who you are that never even scratched the surface. They wanted to control your story, make you doubt your clarity. Ever notice how after the spell, confusion tried to settle in? You felt foggy, second-guessed your path, wondered if your voice was even wanted. That wasn't your mind. That was the aftermath of energetic sabotage. They didn't need to argue with you. They were trying to fracture your inner compass. But what they didn't know is that your compass doesn't run on human opinions. It runs on alignment. And when that alignment kicked back in, so did your power. Louder, sharper, untouchable. Imagine this. You're standing on a cliff. They think pushing you off will end you, but the moment they shove, wings you didn't know you had burst open. You don't fall, you fly. That's how your voice transformed. When they tried to bind your throat, your aura took over. Your intuition stepped in. Your vibration started speaking truths they couldn't unhear. You became a walking disruption, not by sound, but by presence. And it haunted them, because the less you spoke, the more things started breaking around them. The rituals didn't land. The control didn't stick. Their gossip lost impact. They underestimated you so badly, they forgot to look at the source. You're not powered by approval. You're not fueled by followers. You're plugged into something eternal. And that scares the life out of people who live for manipulation. They cast that spell hoping to choke you into silence, but all they did was awaken dimensions of your voice they can't reach. Your energy started communicating through the universe itself. Synchronicities became your script. Signs, symbols, even strangers started echoing your truth. The universe began translating your spirit into language only the aligned could hear. You may have felt alone in this. You may have sat there wondering, why did they come after me so hard? Why silence me? Because your voice doesn't just speak, it transforms. When you speak, illusions fall. When you speak, people remember who they are. When you speak, the game ends for the manipulator. So they tried to end your influence the only way they could, by cursing the channel. But they forgot that chosen ones don't need channels. We are the channel. We are the current. Even in your quiet seasons, the world shifted because of your stillness. You weren't inactive, you were being recalibrated. And during that recalibration, the energy they sent hit walls. It circled back, exposed them, and elevated you. What was meant to destroy you turned into the very fire that refined your voice into something stronger. And now you speak without speaking. You echo without trying. You disturb their shadows with nothing but a glance. Imagine this. They walk into a room and your name is mentioned. Immediately the air shifts. They tense up. Their eyes dart. Their chest tightens. That's what your energy does now. It lingers. It reminds. It confronts. Not through drama, not through noise, just presence, just alignment, just truth that never needed to shout to be felt. They tried to erase you from the script, not realizing you are the script. They tried to control the narrative, not realizing you wrote it. They thought if they shut your mouth, the message would stop. But the message didn't need lips. It needed resonance, and resonance can't be silenced. It multiplies. So if you feel like your voice has changed, it has. It's evolved. It's now tuned into dimensions only the chosen can access. That's why you no longer beg to be heard. You know you're being received. In dreams, in symbols, in gut feelings, in divine timing. You don't chase attention. You command it by doing nothing but existing in alignment. Let them keep trying to understand you with their shallow tools. Let them keep burning candles, drawing circles, whispering incantations. None of it touches the frequency you live on, because now you are the sound they can't unhear, the presence they can't erase, the sermon they never wanted but desperately needed. And every time they try again, the universe gets louder through you. That's the price of touching sacred power without permission. It teaches its own lesson. And you, chosen one, are now the living reminder that truth, once awakened, doesn't just speak. It resonates forever. Number 3, they threw the curse, but it crashed into a mirror and shattered their own image. You can't break a mirror without seeing your own face crack first. They thought they were coming for you, thought they had power over you, but what they really attacked was themselves. That's the part they didn't see coming. They assumed you were a soft, still target, a weak one, easy to bend. But what they hit wasn't weakness. It was a spiritual mirror, polished by truth and sealed by alignment. And the moment their dark energy made contact, it recoiled. Not because you fought, not because you cursed back, but because their intent was never compatible with your frequency in the first place. Imagine this. Someone throws poison at a wall expecting it to melt, but it bounces off and splashes them in the face. That's what just happened here. The spell didn't disappear, it boomeranged. That's why their peace started crumbling. That's why the chaos didn't touch you, but swallowed them whole. the headaches, the losses, the strange tragedies. That wasn't bad luck. That was energy fulfilling its contract. They wanted you to fall, but instead they ended up triggering the collapse of their own house. And some might ask, why? Why did it return to them so violently? Because truth doesn't absorb what isn't aligned. You weren't carrying guilt, shame, or deceit. Your aura wasn't compatible with the weight they tried to dump on you. So the spell looked for somewhere else to land, and it followed the signature right back to the sender. You didn't block it. Your energy simply didn't accept it. That's the power of being clean in spirit. You become non-stick. Their intentions couldn't grip you, and when energy can't bind, it breaks. You didn't resist with fire. You resisted by standing still, and that stillness turned you into the clearest mirror they've ever faced. They weren't fighting you. They were fighting their own reflection and losing. This is why they panicked, why they grew quiet, why the ones who cursed you now avoid you. Because now, every time they see your face, they remember their own exposure. They're not afraid of your voice. They're afraid of the mirror you've become. That mirror didn't scream. It didn't argue. It just reflected. And reflection doesn't lie. Their spell didn't fail because they lacked effort. It failed because the universe enforces accuracy. Every word they chanted, every intention they formed, came with a timestamp and a signature. It was never anonymous. That's why when it rebounded, it didn't miss. You didn't win because you fought harder. You won because you were aligned. In the end, they judged themselves. And now the price is being paid, not because you wanted revenge, but because the universe always collects what was ordered. They broke the code. You stayed still. And stillness, when aligned with truth, is the loudest judgment of all. Number 4, they didn't attack a person. They collided with universal law. You can break a person's heart, but you can't break a law written into the fabric of the universe. They thought they were crossing you. They didn't realize they were crossing the blueprint that built them. You were never just someone moving through the chaos of life. You were structure inside motion, balance walking in human form. Every step you take echoes order. Every breath you release aligns with truth. So when they tried to twist your path, they weren't battling your will. They were challenging the very law that keeps the universe standing. And that kind of mistake never ends well. Some people don't fall because you curse them. They fall because they touched what can't be bent. When they aimed their rituals and envy at you, they were trying to rewrite equations that were sealed before they were even born. The universe doesn't negotiate balance. It doesn't debate fairness. It doesn't pause to explain justice. It just restores it. The moment they interfered with your alignment, the gears of consequence started grinding, silent at first, but unstoppable once in motion. Imagine this, a fool throwing a rock at a thunderstorm, thinking the sky won't respond. That's what they did. They underestimated what happens when you touch a force that exists to maintain equilibrium. Your piece wasn't passive, it was coded enforcement. You don't carry protection, you are protection. You don't ask the universe to step in. It steps automatically when you're threatened because your energy field operates on principles, not emotions. They saw calmness and mistook it for fragility. They saw silence and called it surrender. But stillness in a chosen one is a warning, not a weakness. When you didn't fight back, it wasn't fear. It was law observing, collecting, calculating. That's why judgment took time, because precision is patient. You're not lucky to survive, you're authorized to exist. Look back, and you'll see the pattern. The ones who plotted behind your back started unraveling without you ever saying a word. Their peace disappeared, their plans collapsed. Some even disappeared from your story entirely. You didn't lift a finger, the system did. That's not cruelty, that's calibration. The universe doesn't punish, it corrects. And when energy that doesn't belong in your orbit tries to linger, it gets processed out. Imagine this: you're the core frequency of a song, and anything out of tune gets erased by default. That's your power. Not anger, not spells, not revenge, just precision. You carry laws that can't be violated without consequence. When they mocked your silence, they were mocking the calm before their own storm. Now they finally understand. You were never the threat. You were the test. The universe watched how they treated balance disguised as a person, and when they failed, the lesson was immediate. That's why the collapse looked surgical. The energy didn't lash out, it simply removed what refused to align. They weren't punished, they were processed. That's the truth behind every downfall that followed their attack. You didn't destroy them, you didn't even react. The law corrected itself because you are not beneath it, you embody it. And once they challenged that, their fate was sealed. You don't live by permission, chosen one. You live by principle. And principle doesn't break. It breaks everything that tries to break it. Number 5. They picked the wrong soul to play warfare with. They came to test weapons. You came built like the storm that invented them. They looked at your silence and thought it meant surrender. They watched you stay calm and mistook it for fear. But what they never grasped was that stillness is the final stage of mastery. You didn't need to react because the war they started was beneath your frequency. You've seen energies darker than their candles could ever summon. You've walked through storms that taught you what true power feels like: quiet, grounded, unshakable. That's why you didn't move when they came for you. You'd already survived worse before they even knew your name. Real power doesn't make noise. It bends noise into harmony. Imagine this: a child swinging a stick at a lightning bolt. That's what they did. They came with imitation tools, borrowed spells, tired chants, rituals copied from others. They thought they were dealing with someone ordinary, but they were clashing with a frequency built from light, older than fear itself. The universe has tested you too many times to let low-level energy win now. Your vibration doesn't register their darkness as a threat. It treats it like static on a radio, irrelevant background noise that dissolves before it ever reaches you. They never understood that your humility wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. You've learned that power doesn't perform, it calibrates. You don't fight for control because you already are control. You don't swing back because your existence alone rearranges every battlefield. Your energy doesn't fight, it dominates. And domination doesn't look like rage. It looks like peace that refuses to move. You weren't protected by luck. You were insulated by design. Their rituals malfunctioned because your energy couldn't be decoded. Their curses collapsed because your spirit doesn't speak the language of fear. When they called your name in darkness, the echo didn't find you. It found itself. You're not a receiver for low frequencies. You're the firewall. You exist on a level their energy can't even reach, and that's why everything they tried backfired. Imagine this: throwing stones at the ocean. They make a splash, but the sea swallows them whole and keeps on moving. That's you. Every weapon they formed fell apart the moment it met your field. You weren't being attacked. You were being tested, and the universe wanted to prove one simple truth: real light doesn't burn when darkness touches it. They learned that lesson the hard way. Their spell circles cracked. Their sleep vanished. Their own energy turned on them like a blade that couldn't find its target. You didn't need to curse them back. The universe handled the return. Because you were never prey in this story. You were proof that no counterfeit power can override authentic alignment. They came with ritual, you came with resonance, and resonance always wins. They thought they could shake you, but all they did was expose how untouchable you truly are. You are a walking firewall, built of frequencies that the universe itself guards. They picked the wrong vessel, and now they know you don't threaten divine order without being rewritten by it. Number 6. They tried to borrow power from darkness and ended up drowning in it. They weren't attacking you out of strength. They were clawing for relevance inside their own collapse. Darkness always disguises dependency as dominance. They never had power, only addiction. What they called spiritual work was nothing but starvation dressed up as ritual. They weren't channeling energy, they were begging for it. You didn't wound them, you reminded them they were empty. Every time your calm entered a room, it made their noise unbearable. Every time you glowed, their shadows panicked. They didn't want your downfall, they wanted your light source. Because when envy meets purity, it always confuses inspiration for threat. They wrapped themselves in symbols and tools they didn't understand. They burned candles, whispered chants, made offerings, not as acts of power, but as cries for validation. They weren't summoning control. They were trying to plug their emptiness into anything that could numb the realization that they'd long lost alignment. They used darkness as a crutch, mistaking dependency for authority. But here's the truth. What feeds on darkness always ends up devouring itself. Imagine this, someone lost in a cave, lighting a fire to feel safe, but the smoke starts choking them before they ever find the exit. That's what happened to them. Their rituals didn't connect them to power. They buried them deeper in their own confusion. They didn't realize the universe doesn't respond to desperation. It exposes it. And when they aimed that desperation at you, they triggered exposure on both sides. Your energy wasn't just resistant, it was revealing. It showed them the cost of their illusion. When they tried to curse you, their reflection stared back. The energy they conjured refused to attack you because you vibrate at a level it can't comprehend, so it turned inward. Every failed spell became a confession that they were powerless without deception. Every chant became proof that they no longer had access to truth. Light doesn't fight darkness, it simply forces it to recognize itself. That's why, after every attempt, your peace got deeper, your glow sharper. Meanwhile, their energy rotted under the weight of its own need. They didn't realize that the universe doesn't bless theft, especially not spiritual theft. You can't steal light. You can only imitate it until the reflection burns you. Imagine this. They kept pouring water into a cracked jar, convinced they were filling something, but all they did was prove they couldn't hold what they were pretending to carry. Their obsession with you wasn't hatred. It was dependence. You became the reminder of everything they forfeited the moment they chose darkness over growth. So no, they didn't fail to curse you because you fought harder. They failed because they were spiritually bankrupt. You didn't even have to block them. Their own intent collapsed under its falseness. And the universe, precise as ever, returned every ounce of that counterfeit energy back to its owner. They didn't lose power. They lost their illusion of it. Now, as their circles crumble and their voices fade, your stillness stands as living proof. Light doesn't need defense. It is the defense. Their dependency on darkness became the rope around their own neck, and your endurance became their unspoken lesson. You can't outcast what was never in the dark to begin with. Number 7. The death wasn't random. It was the universe settling its score. When darkness forgets the rules, the universe reminds it with silence. Energy doesn't punish, it returns. They thought they could summon destruction and walk away untouched. They thought consequence was negotiable, that they could manipulate the current and outsmart universal law. But the universe doesn't do exceptions. It doesn't bend for ego. It doesn't wait for permission. What happened wasn't misfortune. It was precision. The same death energy they tried to aim at you couldn't land, so it went searching for the only place it recognized: home. They weren't victims of bad luck. They were victims of their own arrogance. You see, energy doesn't vanish when released. It completes itself. It's a circle, not a line. When they invoked that darkness, they lit a fuse on both ends. They believed they were directing it outward, but the vibration doesn't understand deceit. It only understands resonance. And your energy, sealed by alignment, didn't match the chaos they created. So it did what it was programmed to do. It found its true frequency. And that frequency was them. Imagine this. Someone fires a bullet in a mirrored room. No matter how carefully they aim, the shot bounces back. That's the law. That's what they triggered. Their curse didn't vanish. It ricocheted. And when the echo came, it came with force. The universe doesn't deal in revenge. It deals in correction. They didn't summon death. They summoned debt. The energy they called upon demanded a payment, and when it couldn't feed on you, it turned inward. That's why the sudden illnesses, the accidents, the unexplained losses began stacking up in their circle. They touched a current that was never meant for human hands, a current that exists to maintain balance. They thought they were weaponizing it. In truth, they were signing their own return slip. Imagine this. A child playing with lightning, thinking it's a toy. They never mean to get burned, but intention doesn't protect against law. The universe doesn't care how innocent someone thinks they are when they interfere with sacred order. It doesn't judge motives, it measures alignment. And when you are aligned, when your energy runs clean, every distortion aimed your way gets recycled back into balance, sometimes violently so. Their death wasn't the universe choosing sides. It was the current resetting. Energy is math, not morality. It doesn't say who's good or bad. It simply returns what's due. They sent out destruction, and the same vibration circled back, amplified by the purity of the field it couldn't touch. The echo came full force, and it demanded equilibrium. What they called a curse became the evidence of law. You didn't ask for vengeance. You didn't have to. The system is self-correcting. When someone throws chaos into sacred order, it doesn't vanish. It collapses inward. You didn't destroy them. Their own creation did. The universe didn't strike them down out of wrath. It just closed the loop they opened. That's why you're still here. Not because you were protected by chance, but because truth can't be erased. You're coded into the current itself. They forgot that light isn't fragile, it's structural. When you exist in alignment, even death energy can't cross your threshold. It dissolves at the gate and returns home to finish the work it started. So no, what happened wasn't coincidence. It was consequence. It was the sound of balance restoring itself. The universe doesn't miss. It never forgets. They released chaos, and chaos reclaimed its source. And that's why you're still breathing, still glowing, still walking proof that truth doesn't retaliate. It recalibrates. Number 8. They feared your voice because it shattered the spirits they serve. They didn't hate your voice. They feared what it exposed in their silence. Your words weren't noise to them. They were demolition tools disguised as sentences. Your voice isn't just communication. It's confrontation. And every time you spoke, it cracked something open. Not just in them, but in the rooms they controlled. You didn't need a stage. You didn't need a spotlight. Just a sentence, a look, or even your breath in the atmosphere was enough to shift the energy in the space. That's why they wanted you silent. Not because you were wrong, but because you were too right for the systems they were trying to protect. You weren't loud, you were accurate, and that accuracy hit like fire in a room full of shadows. They didn't serve light, they served confusion, and confusion can't survive in clarity. Your words didn't just make people think, they made people wake up. And the people who depended on control, manipulation, secrecy, they panicked. Because your voice had the power to make others remember, to make them question, feel, see. You weren't speaking opinions, you were carrying codes, living frequencies that shattered illusions people had lived under for decades. Imagine this, a dark, sealed room that's been undisturbed for years. Suddenly, a window opens and the sunlight burns everything that was hiding. That's your voice. It didn't just speak, it unveiled. They didn't flinch at your sound, they flinched at the effect. Every syllable you released challenged invisible chains. Every truth you spoke made people realize they'd been lied to. You weren't attacking anyone. You were awakening everyone, and that's what made you dangerous, not because you were destructive, but because your presence revealed where the rot had been hiding. That's why they came after you. That's why gossip followed you, sabotage surrounded you, and strange resistance always showed up the moment you started speaking your truth. They weren't reacting to you. They were reacting to the tremor you triggered inside their false foundation. Their comfort was built on lies, and you came with a truth that didn't need explanation. It just vibrated. You weren't a threat to them. You were a threat to what controlled them. They weren't serving sacredness. They were addicted to control, and control dies in the presence of real liberation. Your words made their shadows nervous. Your truth forced their masks to slip. They weren't afraid you'd hurt them. They were terrified you'd reveal them. And when that fear reached its breaking point, they did what all insecure energy does. They tried to silence the source. But you can't mute what was born to awaken. You can't bind a voice that's wrapped in universal alignment. They thought they were just shutting down a person, but what they were really trying to kill was a frequency. A sound that told every hidden force, your time is up. So now you know, it was never personal, it was spiritual, and your voice wasn't too much, it was exactly what the room needed. That pressure you felt after speaking, that resistance, that was truth cracking through generations of suppression. That was the sound of demons losing their grip. And you, chosen one, were the one holding the microphone they couldn't unplug. Number 9, they thought you were done, but silence was just you reloading. When a chosen one goes quiet, the universe gets loud. They didn't hear your silence as a warning. Now it's the only sound left. They cheered when you fell silent. They mistook your stillness for surrender, like they'd finally broken the rhythm of your rise. But you weren't collapsing, you were calculating. Every chosen one knows. When the noise gets too loud, silence becomes the sword. You didn't shut down because you were defeated. You pulled back because divine strategy demands withdrawal before revelation. They were watching for movement, unaware that your stillness was the movement. Silence is the sound your power makes when it's preparing to speak in results. Imagine this, a battlefield where the dust settles, the noise fades, and your enemies think you've disappeared. But behind the veil, the universe is arranging outcomes, redirecting storms, recalibrating paths. That's what your silence was. Divine negotiation. While they were busy watching your page, your name was being written into destiny behind closed doors. Your silence stripped them of control. When you stopped posting, responding, explaining, they lost their leverage. You weren't feeding their illusion anymore. You unplugged from the matrix of their manipulation. They couldn't spin your story because you gave them no new pieces, and in that quiet, their power crumbled. Not because you screamed louder, but because you let silence scream for you. The quieter you became, the clearer your vibrations spoke. They didn't fear your voice, they feared your disappearance, because in that silence, their lies couldn't breathe. You stopped explaining yourself, and suddenly their gossip had nowhere to anchor. You stopped reacting, and their chaos became background noise. You turned your back, and the universe turned toward you, because realignment begins in quiet. Imagine this. A lion who walks away from the fight, not because it lost, but because it won before the enemy even knew a war had started. That's what you became. You weren't retreating, you were reshaping. You weren't absent, you were ascending. Now they sit in confusion, wondering why their attacks didn't work. They refresh your page, they ask mutuals, they wait for a reaction that never comes. But what they don't understand is, you've graduated from explanation. You've moved into demonstration, and silence is how that transition begins. You turned the volume down on them, and turned the frequency up on your future. They wanted you loud, because loud can be tracked. But when you went quiet, you became untouchable, not invisible. Untouchable, because silence doesn't mean you're missing. It means you're moving in ways they'll never understand. Until the results show up like thunder, and they realize your silence wasn't the end. It was the beginning of their reckoning. Number 10. Their rituals became receipts, and the universe is holding everyone. They thought they were hiding in darkness, but every whisper left a footprint in the light. The universe doesn't need proof, it is the proof. They thought they could move in silence, that if the room was dark enough and the chant was quiet enough, no one would ever know what they did. But energy doesn't lie, and the spiritual realm doesn't forget. Every intention they formed against you, every spell, every ritual, every dagger thrown in the dark was recorded, not in books, in vibration. Energy always signs its name, whether you want it to or not. They weren't erasing you, they were writing a case against themselves. Every time they lit a candle with your name in malice, the universe logged it. Every time they wished destruction upon you, the frequency field took note. Because that's how divine law works. It doesn't rely on human eyes. It listens, it feels. And in the spiritual realm, your alignment screamed louder than their rituals ever could. Imagine this, a courtroom with no walls, no jury, no noise, just vibration echoing through eternity, testifying on its own. That's where their rituals ended up. Not buried, not forgotten, but displayed before the forces that govern consequence. They didn't realize they weren't casting spells. They were creating evidence. That's why you're seeing the unraveling, friend groups splitting, secrets leaking, their names being spoken in rooms they never imagined. And you didn't say a word. You didn't need to. Because when your energy is clean, it becomes a light too bright for lies to survive under. Your silence didn't protect them, it sentenced them. What they tried to do in secret is now screaming in the open. The universe flipped the script. Their spells didn't curse you, they confirmed you. You became the reference point for truth, and anything that tried to stand against you exposed itself by contrast. People are waking up, not because you fought back, but because their energy betrayed them. The curses turned into confessions, the rituals turned into receipts, and the more they moved in darkness, the more that darkness pointed directly at them. Imagine this, a thief wearing gloves, thinking they left no trace, only to find their shadow told the whole story. That's what's happening now. Their shadows are testifying, their own vibration is snitching. And you You're just standing still while the universe builds your case with every lie they ever told. The universe didn't just defend you, it documented every move they made. This is why everything feels like divine timing. The right people are learning the truth. The hidden hands are being exposed. It's not magic, it's evidence maturing into justice. You were never buried. You were planted in the center of a cosmic investigation, and now the files are open. The verdict is rolling out, and the hands that tried to bury you are now sinking under the weight of their own documented intent. They didn't just lose the battle, they wrote their own sentence, and the universe delivered it right on schedule. And that, chosen one, is the final stamp. Their fall wasn't just a consequence, it was a cosmic headline, a silent alarm sent across dimensions. Don't touch what the universe protects. You didn't just survive, you were crowned in silence. And now, you don't need to speak loud. Your energy already told the story. The war is over. The universe handled it all. And now, your presence stands as the evidence, the message, and the warning. If this message struck your spirit, like the video, subscribe to stay aligned and drop 77 in the comments if you know you're walking in sealed protection. Share this with someone who needs that reminder.